So my name is Rashenda Fairhurst. I'm wearing the collar today. It's a little scary because I have a testimony meeting immediately after this. I'm not going to have time to change. So just going to have to invest in the process here. But I assure you, I am friendly and Methodist. So I know not all of us Methodists choose this particular apparel. So today, what we're going to be talking about is the organizing that's going on in annual conferences. This is a movement cafe. We're going to be spending about an hour and a half together hearing from panelists, and they're going to be introducing themselves in just a couple of minutes. And very, very excited. We have folks from all over many jurisdictions in the United States. Even though Methodism, of course, is worldwide, a lot of the organizing that we're talking about today is going to be really U.S. specific. And so that's apologies, and also a focus for us just for this particular meeting. I want to also just introduce the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, because that is the body sponsoring this and bringing this about. And to do that, I'm going to ask Kathy Velasquez Eberhardt to share what is this movement with us.
Hi, folks. So glad you could join us. Greetings from Minnesota, where I'm an earth keeper and a layperson in my United Methodist Church. As some of you are familiar with what we're calling the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, but just want to give us all a big kind of a upfront introduction to that. The United Methodist Church does have a long history of working on creation justice and working on creation care and environmental injustices. But recently, in the last few years, there's been increased urgency around those issues. And as such, folks have started asking the question, what more might we do together? And so as Earth Keepers got connected and got to know each other, as annual conferences developed teams, as we had events and conferences, we imagined things we could do together. And some of those included work teams that we would develop. So we have one a work team on worship, one on advocacy, one doing communications. And the one that we're going to really celebrate today is our annual conference organizing team. And you'll hear more about that. But it's really just an opportunity to make use of this structure that we call the United Methodist Church and find ways to do work together that heal the planet and our relationship with it. So grateful for you all to be here today. And I'm excited to hear the stories that you'll get to hear today, and look forward to hearing more about what you're working on. That's all I'll have for today. I'll turn you back to you, Rashenda.
Kathy, yes. So it's a come on in, right? It's a welcome to the movement. If you're already in the movement, chew it through with us. We are so excited to have a big conversation together. It's hard sometimes. We're so in different places. So to be together is a real treat. And if you're learning about this for the first time, you will find us to be a friendly and inviting bunch. So I would like to, at this point, ask Karen McElfish if she would give us kind of a nutshell version of what our real focused conversation will be today.
So I actually wanted to give a little bit of history about the annual conference organizing team. We first started this effort back at the Nashville Summit in 2019. And there were a few of us that gathered around and thought, all right, how many annual conferences have creation care teams? And then who could we help start a team, and how might we do that? And that led to conversations around how we would educate, and we developed a series of 7 webinars on organizing annual conference teams. And that led to, being able to share best practices was a very positive thing for the group to be doing. And so we developed the jurisdictional networking teams that some of you have had an opportunity to participate with. And from there, we just kind of kept growing. Well, what else do we need to do as annual conference teams? How do we engage our bishops? How do we work with the conference staff? How do we use the resolution process? And what model resolutions might we put forward that would be of use to the annual conference teams? And so lots of really exciting things coming out of all of these opportunities to connect and to network. And today we get to hear about some of those really exciting things.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. Yes. This is why we're here. So, okay. So the next thing that's going to happen is we have different folks who are going to be sharing what's going on for them. Just a tiny, tiny piece of what's going on for them because all of these folks are engaged just in so many things. And what will happen is they're going to spend a couple minutes just to introduce themselves, and then later they'll talk a little bit more about what they're doing. And I'm going to pop something in the chat that tells a little bit more about them too at that same time. And I want to invite you, if you're here, this is a great moment to pop something into chat about yourself, where you're serving if you're serving, where you're a member if you're a member, what you're curious about if you've come here to find out what things are, where you are located in the US or the world, your name, those sorts of things. So the first person who I think we're going to ask for introduction is from West Carolina Conference. And so that would be Reverend Jonathan Brake and Kim Richmond.
Well, hello, folks. My name is Jonathan Brake, and I am clergy in the United Methodist Church. Was part of the first Earth Keepers training back in 2016 and became a part of the United Methodist Justice movement, organization, leadership. And part of what I was involved in was starting our creation care ministry team for the Western North Carolina Conference, and began that and got it connected in, and it's going well now. Turned over the reins of that to Kim Richmond a couple of years ago, and she is doing a fabulous job. We both just got out of a meeting in a couple of hours ago, well, just a few minutes ago. Together, we were with our lead team and planning for things like annual conference coming up in just a couple of months, and the fact that we're in North Carolina, where Charlotte is, and General Conference is coming up, and so we're starting to talk about what can we do to help make that happen. But there are a lot of exciting things happening in our annual conference, and I'll let Kim just introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Richmond. I am a lay person from Winston-Salem, and I attend Maple Springs United Methodist Church there. And Jonathan is way too modest. He is still very actively engaged in helping lead our conference creation care ministry team. And it is just a real joy to work with him. We've got other volunteers, a mix of lay leaders, a mix of clergy, and even staff members from our conference staff office. And, I think Jonathan said it well. We're focusing right now on annual conference matters. We're also focusing on looking forward even towards the season of creation, an eco-focused mission team, different things, which has just been really great. We've been going at it for a few years now, and learning and growing so much from all of the contacts with the other annual conferences. So it's so nice to see everyone here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And next, Nancy Blade from Northern Illinois.
Thanks, Rashinda. And I'm gonna jump in on the one of the break rooms, so I don't have a spot in this forum, but I wanted to say that we've had things going on in Northern Illinois since 2015, and I've been a part of that movement. I am clergy. It's been difficult to continue the movement, but we've had a change with the net zero focus, and I'll be excited to tell you a little bit about that in our break room.
Wonderful. Kimberly Hornung-Marcy, and go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm very inspired from what I've learned already from hearing from the people you'll hear from today, and honored to be part of this group. I'm a retired clergy person in the New England Annual Conference. I live in Northern Vermont, and I retired in 2020 to focus on climate change as a volunteer full-time. And I also chair our conference board of Church and Society, which has been a great place to help our conference move forward. We are helping the New England United Methodists fight climate change and hope to add a part-time climate coordinator to conference staff soon.
Marvelous. Thank you. And from the Mountain Sky Conference, Mary Beth Downing.
Hi, my name is Mary Beth Downing. I live in Colorado because Mountain Sky has Colorado, Utah, Montana, and Wyoming, which presents a true challenge. I'm an earth keeper. I'm a laity. I'm the chair of the Green Earth team at my church. I am the communications person on our task force, and I know some of you, and it's nice to see you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Kara Fleischer, also from Florida Conference.
Well, hey everyone, and happy Earth Week. I'm so happy to be with you. I'm sure you're as crazy busy as I am. This is kind of like our Super Bowl week and getting ready for Creation Care Sunday, and but it's a beautiful, joyful time of year. I am the Creation Care Task Team Chair for the Florida Conference, and I also started my Creation Care team at our church 7 years ago and still lead that. I also am an earth keeper, and my background's in communications. So I'm an eco consultant for Rethink Energy Florida, and I ran for office, and I'm a soil and water conservation district supervisor. So I've really been trying to follow my call, and I was at a phase where I was like, bring it to me, God, and I'll do it. Now I'm like, okay, I'm good. Let me just work on what I have. So anyway, it's a joy to be here.
That's wonderful. I definitely, well, how many of us can relate to the Lord? Let's do this. And whoa, Lord, one thing at a time, for sure. So Kara, actually, we're going to start with you next. We're going to be doing is the folks you just heard from are going to share a little bit more about some specific things that they're doing. And oh my gosh, the chat is marvelous. So many good folks here. So I'm going to turn it over to Kara to just share with us more about where she is and what she's up to.
Thank you. Well, I am, again, just really happy to be here and talk about teams. And I really do love the teams that we've built, and it's very close to my heart to support the teams. And so I'm happy to talk about this today. The first thing I wanted to bring up is I see Creation Care Ministry like a faith walk. And when we're working with people on all different stages of their understanding of the environment, of how it connects to faith, it's really been important for us to lead with joy, gratitude, and love for God's creation, and focus on positive things that we all can come together on. And that's including his people. So many times, you know, the examples are, we might have one local church who is just really excited about recycling. And we've all kind of been there, done that with recycling, but our job as leaders is to get really excited that they're really excited, because this is a place to start. And as they dig into that project, they'll grow and they'll evolve, just like many of us that have been doing this for a really long time. But the whole idea is to let's you know, get them encouraged with the things that they're excited about. The other thing that we're really focused on in Florida is when a local church starts a Creation Care ministry, the life of the church begins to see through the prism of sustainability. And so we are very focused on reaching as many churches as we can and identifying who the person there or the people are who are into the environment, who like to garden, try to figure out who those people are and get them on the road to starting a Creation Care ministry. Because we run the risk of just preaching to the choir and the people interested getting better and better and better at this. But until we spread it out and let churches know that this is a thing that United Methodists are very excited about, because many times they've never heard of us before, even though we've been doing this a long time. So this is one way that we're really trying to spread that joy, is to reach as many churches as we can. Now, this is a really long list. That's really more of my talking points than anything. But just so you see how we are structured here in Florida, our task team started from a resolution at annual conference, and it's made up of one member from each district. And we're nominated at charge conference. And we can serve for 2 4-year terms, rotating as chair. We're under connectional ministries and we don't have a budget, but we are able to request help if we have a special project that we're working on. One of our main modes of communication is our monthly webinar. We've been doing it for over 2 years now. It's called Eat, Pray, Grow, because you can eat your lunch, pray together, and grow in leadership. And it's for anyone in our conference who's interested in creation care. It also gives us a great way to promote creation care monthly through the communications channels, through the district newsletters, our email list. It just keeps people connected. And so we do maintain that email list, a Facebook page where we go Facebook Live with our event, and the web page on the FLUMC website. We provide district trainings for local churches. And as a team, we meet twice a month, plus the webinar, and we have an annual planning retreat. I know I'm going a little fast, but we are going to cover a lot today. And we're offering a pre-conference training session this year as well for annual conference. Now, this is how we handle our district representatives. So each district has a creation care representative, and they are really engaging with the churches in their district, knowing who their contacts are in their own hometowns and then out from there. And we've really found that that's helped them become the resource for creation care for their DS and for the churches in their district. And because it's all about building those relationships and finding those people, because every church has somebody who, loves the environment. And so that's really our goal, is to find those people and to help get them on the journey towards creation care ministry. This is an example of our Eat, Pray, Grow networking Zoom that we do every month. This was an environmental justice leader focus. We are doing a book study called Saving Us by Catherine Hayhoe. Many of you guys, I'm sure, are aware of that. But this is just what we are promoting monthly. And big thing that we're doing now is our resolution that was passed 2 years ago, plastic and foam free FLUMC. This is what we're really going to be focusing on at annual conference, encouraging everyone to bring their own water bottles, to use our reusable water bottle stations, and then having a booth display there where we're going to really be, digging into the waste going on at the local church and how they can make a difference by changing that. And the last thing, I would invite you, if you are interested, we're going to be doing this Starting a Creation Care Ministry in 6 Simple Steps training. That's going to talk all about the local church, and all of our representatives will be involved giving this pre-conference workshop. So that is what's going on in Florida.
That is wonderful. Hurrah. So this is, I know, a lot because folks are doing a lot, but I encourage you, watch the video later too, to really break down that. And I thought, Kara, you did a great job breaking that down, and very much appreciated. So the next person we're going to hear a little more from is Mary Beth Downing, and she's going to be kind of bringing us a conversation around communications, and I'm going to turn it over to her.
You're a hard act to follow, Kara. Woo! You guys are deep and wide, and it's impressive. And I took notes of like, wow, what a great idea. And that's the whole point of this, is to just go, didn't even think about that. So thank you. We started our task force 2 years ago. There was a group of us that met with the bishop, and she said, absolutely. And so and then we picked Pat Watkins' brain, and he said, oh, we borrowing a lot of stuff from him and from anybody. We are the borrowers. We don't create things necessarily, but we'll use what we find, and we seek and we find. We came up with the 6 working groups: legislative advocacy, local church engagement, which is the green team, building a green team at every place, at every church. We're partnering with United Methodist Women because absolutely they're the leaders showing us the way. There are super allies. The movement, we are trying to expand into that. We have an annual conference group, and then we have a communications group. The gift that was given to us, and I think is key to our success, was the bishop said, yes, go and do this. And she said, and I will give you a 10-hour-a-week staff person. And that was a huge benefit, because as we divided ourselves into the 6 groups, we found that people have passion for one of these or multiple, and then there were leaders, and then people joined those. And then as they envisioned what they would like to do, we have this wonderful person named Dawn Lemons, and her heart is in this work as well. And she would say she would make it so. And so she's young, she's talented, and that's what you need. Somebody who's, or whatever, or someone with the tech stuff to know what they're doing. The communications role feels kind of like the center of the wheel, where it's, I go to a lot of the meetings of the different groups because I feel like I need to highlight what they're doing, know what they're doing. And we meet monthly. Early on, we realized that several people were going in the same direction from different angles. So we meet every month so that we know what the left hand is doing. And that feels really important. And then we can support each other's work and just know what's going on. So we do monthly meetings. We do a Tuesday email blast. And so every Tuesday morning, there's something that comes from the task force, and that's where the working groups can highlight what they're doing, events, resources. So we do that as just trying to be on people's table all the time. Probably the thing we worked the most on was the web pages. We've got web pages with each of the working groups has a web page that they can maintain and improve, and that has created a lot of ownership. And so if people want to know more, they can go to those web pages, and it has contact information and tells you what we're doing. And Dawn helped us create all of that. What we started doing this second year of creation was we started doing webinars. We met with the bishop when we'd been together for a year, and she said, hey, let's do webinars. And so the first one was in October at her suggestion, called It's Not Easy Being Green. And then we followed with a youth panel, and then we followed with a legislative advocacy webinar in January as the state legislatures got off and running. And then lately we've been doing the ones our local church engagement has doing portfolio management training, portfolio manager trainings. If you want to access the Inflation Reduction Act funds, you're going to have to create a baseline, and the way that they're going to do that is through portfolio managers. We are blessed because we have just volunteers with Deep and Wide, and this guy who retired recently from the EPA is leading that. And so anyway, you find your talent. We need to outreach more into our newsletters. One thing that I feel like we are also banging the drum on is we are saying to people, it's not a climate crisis, or it's not a climate change, it's a climate emergency. And so we are trying to highlight that we are using those words in our work because it really is a climate emergency. We're trying, just like Kara said, we really believe that there are people in every congregation who hold this passion and concern near and dear. And so our goal and the challenge we face is, how do you find those when you're so wide and church, it's a hard thing. So at annual conference, thank you to this group that created the resolution, we are going to present the resolution for the creation of a green team in every church. And that we feel like that will legitimize and open the door for, boom, we're here and here's how we want to support you. We use the resolution that you created for us. Like I said, we are the seekers and we find your stuff. And so we will create the resources that go with worship, building practices, education, and legislative advocacy. And to just kind of summarize or to pull together as a final statement is, what Kara said is absolutely true. It's got to be a message of hope. There's a lot of discussion about hope versus optimism, and where in the movement and in the bigger climate action movement. And so optimism is a feeling that can come and go, but hope is a faith conviction and a firm belief. And I feel like action builds hope, and community builds hope, and churches must be the sources for action and community. And we can absolutely step into this moment because we have those two important keys. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, wonderful, Mary Beth. Thank you. Ah, gosh, after each one of these, I'm like, yes. I blew it earlier. I forgot to introduce Karen to give her a chance to tell about herself. So she gets a few extra minutes now to do that. And she will introduce herself and then talk about her focus, which is how do you talk to bishops, those mysterious, berobed wanderers? How do we reach them? So I'm going to turn that over to Karen now, and I'm going to be posting her little blurb in the chat also.
Thanks, Rashenda. I'm Karen McElfish. I am the chair of the annual conference organizing team for the Creation Justice Movement. I'm in Virginia. I'm an earth keeper, and I'm active on the Church and Society Creation Justice team at the conference level. The one thing that I would focus on for Virginia, we organize around what we call our Green Church Initiative, which was established by resolution at the annual conference in 2009. And Pat Watkins was real active in getting that to happen as well. Pat, you got, you spread your roots all over the place. So thank you. We honor churches each year at our annual conference with a Green Church Award, both for first-timers, first-time church, and we have a new award called the Sustaining Green Church Award, which is for past honorees that are continuing to do really good work. And this is a way that at annual conference, we can lift up to the whole annual conference what exemplary churches are doing and give creed to the fact that we have this Green Church Initiative and have the opportunity of spreading that education around. So I'm going to talk a bit about engaging bishops. As many of you know, in November of 2021, the Council of Bishops came out with a statement on the climate crisis, and it was reaffirming the pastoral letter that they had put out in 2009. It was talking about, and I'm just going to go ahead and read the 5 points: encourage and support the action on climate change at annual conference level, including support for passing net zero resolution and moving towards net zero emissions. Annual conference determine how they will engage congregations in education and action around climate stewardship. Review the Council of Bishops statement, God's renewed creation. That's the 2009 pastoral letter, to determine how to best address the intersection of climate change, poverty, racism, and colonialism, and work alongside partners such as UWF, Global Church and Society, Global Missions, Westpath, ecumenical and interfaith partners of the general church and local community level. Encourage the use of Church and Society's website to sign on to letters related to climate justice. Join the general boards and agencies in the pledge towards net zero emissions. And in our public statement summarizing meeting action, we reaffirm paragraph 160.d, global climate stewardship, as our ongoing commitment to join the movement to address creation care and climate change as an existential crisis the church cannot ignore. So from our social principles. So in light of this statement that the bishops put out, which was really powerful in November of 21, our annual conference organizing team started to think about, well, how could we engage our bishops? What could we do to support them? Some of them were already on board. You've heard Mary Beth talk about Bishop Karen and how supportive she was, and Pat could give you stories about Bishop Hope Morgan Ward and how she actually advocated for the start of the Creation Care team in North Carolina, and had some very specific ideas about how that should happen, including enlisting the support of all the district superintendents at each of the district levels. There are obviously going to be some bishops that are going to be really key supporters. And so obviously we want to enlist them early on. There are going to be others for whom this is a stretch. So this is an opportunity to educate, to give them the information that they need, because bishops are not necessarily going to be climate specialists. And many of us, over all of the reading and the work we have done, are going to be more knowledgeable, perhaps even much more knowledgeable than our bishops. And so this is an opportunity for us to educate. We can engage them. Many of us have one bishop that is being shared between 2 annual conferences, or I don't think we've got any bishops sharing 3, but this is an opportunity for annual conference teams to come together and collectively work with their bishop so that it's a concerted effort. We can continue to offer in a very positive way our help and support so that they know that they have that support if they when they act. Not if they act, but when they act, that we're right there with them, supporting them, educating them, and helping along the way. We also want to encourage meeting with our district superintendents, because as part of the cabinet, they also can support the bishop in his or her work. And likewise, the conference staff, so that they are, again, aware of and can support the bishop in his or her work. The specific asks that you might want to consider as you meet with your bishop, that you ask for the bishop to support an annual conference team, whether you already have one or are in the process of forming one, by blessing it, by supporting and providing communications and admin support, such as Mary Beth was talking about, Bishop Karen, funding and staffing, if at all possible. That we ask that the bishop be involved in advocacy work. The bishop has a platform that many of us don't have. Their voice carries more authority by virtue of their position. And so we want to ask them to be a public witness, to distribute, for example, action alerts, and to be a part of that communication channel. We also want them to be vocal. So in preaching and praying and speaking, that they're also talking about creation justice. We want them to support the net zero action that the bishops made their statement about in November of 21. And we want them to support creation justice callings and perhaps some new church plants that are creation oriented. We realize that there are going to be a lot of challenges, disaffiliation being one of them. That's sort of the big elephant in the room. But also a lot of bishops are in the process of retiring, or as I'd already mentioned, one bishop may have 2 annual conferences. So the spread of episcopal wealth, if you will, is a bit on the thin side. And so that's also going to be potentially problematic as we reach out to them. All the more we want to give them the understanding that we're there to support and to help and to shepherd them along the way as well. As bishops move, it's a great opportunity to reach out to them, to prepare them for their new district. As Kara knows, her bishop, Bishop Tom Berlin, came from Virginia, and before he left, I spent several hours in discussion with him on creation care and why I felt that was important, and the real wealth of resources that he was going to be stepping into in Florida, as we've heard about. Our immediate past bishop headed to Mississippi, and prior to her leaving, I also sent her with a great deal of information, which I am hopeful she will be able to utilize in an area such as Mississippi, which gets hit with fairly severe storms. Our new bishop came on board, and one of the first things I did was reached out to her. And most recently, I reached out to her, encouraging her to make a statement for Earth Day. And lo and behold, she took me up on it. And so she just recently put out a statement which went out to all through ClergyNet and LaityNet, and just today is in our e-advocate, which is our e-newsletter. So I'm thrilled about that. One more resource I'm going to tell you about is that our June of 2022 newsletter has an article detailing a lot of ways to meet with your bishop and more ideas there. So go to the UMCJM website, to our archives of newsletters, and you'll find that there under the June 22 newsletter. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back to you, Rashinda.
Wonderful, wonderful. So yeah, I'm going to invite Jonathan Brake now to talk to us a little bit about vocation, eco mission. He's in the center again of lots and lots of things. And so Jonathan, a few minutes for you to share with us what you bring today.
Sure. So many of us have a passion for this ministry and this work. And somewhere along the way, we realized that wouldn't it be wonderful if I could actually get paid to do this as a job? That was my situation for a long time. I remember being in a meeting with might have been Kim Richmond and a couple of others when the question came, Jonathan, can you get a something done by this weekend? And I said, no, I can't. It's already Thursday, and I've been doing this work all week long, and I'm a pastor, and I have a sermon to prepare for Sunday, because my passion was so much doing this work that I was pouring so much time into it. Mary's Mary Beth is nodding her head because she retired to be able to do this. And vocation in this ministry area is one where those of us who see it and get it realize that we have so far to go. And yet, because of the way that our United Methodist system is going right now, and the concerns over disaffiliation and the stretching of the bishops and so many other factors, what we keep hearing again and again is funding is just not there for this. And yet we're being creative and coming up with ways to do that. And so here in the Western North Carolina Conference, that kind of collided with another thing that was bubbling up within our annual conference. And sometimes God just puts things together. It's not a coincidence. It's definitely a divine arrangement of circumstances. And in our case, the creation care ministry that I helped found for the conference was moved from one area of leadership in the conference staff to another. And we now fall under our conference disaster relief coordinator and mission engagement office, which has been a blessing because our staff person there had noticed that trying to get building teams and mission teams to go out is becoming more and more difficult for a number of reasons. It's harder to find retired people with time and availability that are young enough who still have the physical ability to go out and do that work. Many people no longer have all the tools necessary and the know-how to do a lot of the repair work on homes and places like that. And he was hearing from younger folks who want to do mission work, but they don't want to just go put a house back together after a flooded area. They're asking questions of, why are we putting the house back where it flooded? Why are we not taking different steps and recognizing that our future is not what it used to be in the case of climate change and all this? And so he began to look at, how do we pull together mission, disaster response, and creation care, creation justice issues, and formed as part of his Earthkeepers project last year, he formed a mission opportunity in the mountains of Western North Carolina, where the remnants of a hurricane had come up from the Gulf. And as it comes up through the Appalachian Mountains, a lot of times it will just drench an area, which causes flooding. Such was the case. And he was engaged in trying to work in mission work there. But he saw the need for an ecological restoration focus and a recognition of the injustices that are caused in these places by what we call disasters. So he formed what was our first eco-focused mission trip event and did a beta group with a couple of youth groups who came up to be immersed in the community and learn about things like the historical reality that caused a place to be weakened before a disaster comes along. How are the resources allocated or not allocated to certain persons in a community? How can we as a church bring our faith into the caring for people, but not just through sitting and listening, but encouraging and giving the opportunity to lift themselves out of a situation and put themselves in a better place. And where does our care for the land and the ecology have to do with that? And so it was a beautiful experience. We began to look at how do we expand that. And in the process of meeting with our bishop about how can we as a creation care team help you carry out what bishops are called to do, but you don't have time for. So let us be your worker bees. We brought up the idea of this eco-focused mission, and our bishop got so excited. He said, yeah, let's put something behind this and make it happen. And so for a number of months now, we've been in the process of trying to come up with a way that looks like now we'll have at least a part-time position at our conference level that will focus on developing this eco-focused mission plan as a way of recognizing a calling to this kind of ministry and a paid position to make that happen. And so the Holy Spirit continues to move and make those things happen. But I say that to say, when it comes to vocation and it comes to missions and caring for people in the creation, we need to be creative and come up with ways and just keep asking questions. Where does God want to see this happen? And so if you're interested in more information or talking more about kind of where you are, if you're starting in the process, if you've hit some brick walls, you're trying to figure out what to do next, join me in the breakout session a little later, and we'll talk some more about how do we do some of these things around vocation and eco-focused mission, if you're interested. Shinna?
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, lots of content. And rounding out our panel today, kind of bringing it home for us, is Kimberly Hornung Marcy. She is in the New England Conference. And oh my goodness, they're doing so much there. I'm just going to kind of turn it over to you. I know you're going to touch on hiring strategies, and you're in that happy place, following on what Jonathan said. Of kind of making that, how do we make that actual? How do we press the go button? But much more, I want to just turn it over to you, and excited to hear what you have to say.
Great. All right. So I'm Kim Horning Marcy, and I am retired clergy in the New England Annual Conference, which covers all of Vermont, all of New Hampshire, all of Maine, all of Massachusetts, all of Rhode Island, and the eastern half of Connecticut. So I'm preaching to the choir here, but climate change is the worst crisis humanity and the whole creation has ever faced. And the next 5 to 10 years are key. And churches are wondering where the young people are and where the parents of young children are. And guess what? They're in the climate movement. So for all of these reasons, and many more you can think of, our churches need to be involved in slowing down climate change and working for climate justice. So we are about to hire a part-time climate coordinator, 29 hours a week. And I have lots of strategy on how to get to this point. But number one is remembering that in all climate work, our superpower is prayer. We need to stay connected to God's love and God's guidance, because in all of this work, there are moments when you get a good surprise and something moves faster than you ever thought possible. And there's also times of frustration and slowdown. So that's the superpower. Stay connected to God's love and you won't burn out, right? We're not volunteers, we're disciples, and disciples have that superpower. So the second thing I'm going to recommend to everyone is this teeny little book, and I'm going to pop it into the chat. It's called A Spirituality of, well, I thought I could pop it into the chat. I don't know, for some reason it's not. I'll put it in later, but this is A Spirituality of Fundraising by Henry J.M. Nouwen. It'll take you maybe 30 minutes to read it, but it is so key because Henry is a deeply spiritual person, and he talks about how what you need to be sharing is your passion and how what you are trying to accomplish is going to increase faith, hope, and love and transform the world. never apologize for asking for money. And basically, the other principle I follow is there is always money for what we value. So it is a post-pandemic world. It's a disaffiliation time. Some conferences are affected more by that than others. And I recommend you have a good basis for your thinking about money and how it connects to spirituality and discipleship. And Henry Nouwen is fabulous on that. The next thing you need to think about for hiring is who are your allies in your annual conference. For New England, the hiring process came out of our Board of Church and Society, but you may have a stronger focus on fighting climate change in your mission board, or climate justice may be a focus of your Commission on Religion and Race. United Women in Faith are very focused on fighting climate change. That might be a source of allies. Your general conference and jurisdictional delegates often are very up on this issue, at least ours are. And so they've been key in helping us move this forward. Who are the district superintendents who relate to the relevant boards that should be involved with fighting and slowing down climate change? Then, of course, who is the financial leadership in your conference? Who's chairing your conference committee on finance and administration? If you don't have good relationships with those people, who does? I was very fortunate to have a good friend who was co-chairing our conference finance committee, Reverend Ralph Howe, and he was super key in helping me think through specific steps in our annual conference. And your finance people know where the money is. Most annual conferences have a variety of sources of funds. All of those funds were given to do good. And I can't imagine anything more important than slowing down climate change and working for climate justice. Also, who chairs the program wing of your annual conference? For New England, it's a connectional table, and Reverend Renee Perez has been key in helping us move this forward at both kind of the conference level, and he is one of several people who's on our interviewing team. Who's going to be your director or is your director of connectional ministries? That's, at least in our conference, who's going to be supervising this person. Have a key committee or a key group sponsor the resolution for your annual conference to move forward on hiring. And then stay on top of the process. Just because the annual conference passes something, it doesn't always mean it automatically starts to happen. So you need to continue to be in conversation with the leaders who make these things happen. We are a connectional church. Guess what? The Global Council, the General Council on Finance and Administration provides you an expert staff person to help you in the hiring process. And this is amazing. You have someone who this is their full-time job. They know what's legal to ask. They know what's a good process. And they advise your interviewing team and do a tremendous amount of the legwork. They do the advertising. Of course, you should advertise in any ways you think of as well, and you can give them suggestions. They do the vetting of initial candidates who meet minimum requirements. And from that group, they then present your interviewing team with, say, 10 people and encourage you to pick 2 to 4 as finalists. They take all of your suggestions for the questions for the phone interview and for the actual interview, but having one super expert do all of that makes it consistent, legal, and fair. And then there's process beyond that. And I can go into more of the process in the breakout room, but I'm happy to get contact from anyone who has interest in the hiring process and strategies as well. And so that I'll end my time at this point, but you may have more questions in the breakout room.
Thank you so much, Kim. Prayers up that we will be moving into a time of magnificent hiring where our seminary students and those of us with this vocational call in our hearts will find ways to live that call and feed our families at the same time, which very loaves and fishes type of prayer there, I think. So before we move into our breakout rooms, which we'll do just in a few minutes, we've got some time for some shared Q&A. So I have a question. One of my questions is, how long have y'all been at this, right? So I think I was at my first fossil fuel rally over a decade ago, wearing this and being visible in the community as a Christian person who cared about climate change. And trying to get my conference, although we have wonderful folks who've come up from our conference, the conference itself hasn't really stepped up. And so what I think maybe my experience isn't the only one like that. And because of all of your stellar accomplishments, I'm guessing you've been at this a number of years, and that maybe share with us, like, how long have you been at this? How long did it take to get where you are now? And what were some of the key steps? And I'm just going to throw that out for who might feel a call to answer that. Okay, go ahead, Mary Beth.
I can't even count how many years, but I know it's been about 15 or whatever when we formed the Green Earth team at my church. But I think one of the things that was strangely helpful was during the pandemic, when we were all home, retired or whatever, is all the webinars. I was just like, I just feel like I filled my head and my notebooks with notes, and I appreciate that learning time, and that Zoom has allowed us to connect. This is such a miracle that we are talking across the United States to each other, so that we're not as siloed as we were.
I feel that. Oh my gosh, I feel that. Karen, can I ask you to answer that question too? Because I know through United Methodist Women, through being a lay leader in your conference, that this is something you've sort of, different steps at different times. What's your timeline been like?
Sure. So I'm actually the daughter of a geographer who did natural resource planning. He was one of the first environmentalists in California as a professional. So I grew up with this notion of, caring for the environment was something that people did. I married an environmental lawyer who throughout his career dealt with the various processes that one could utilize from a legal standpoint to protect the environment. But my career was as a pediatrician. So I spent my time to the extent that it dealt with environmental issues, it was public health related, which of course pediatrics is a lot of public health, but it wasn't directly working with the environment. It wasn't until I retired about 5 years ago that I really started to spend a lot more time focusing on creation care and creation justice. But I have been active with United Women in Faith for 25, 30 years. And really, UWF has always been at the forefront of social justice issues, including environmental issues, including issues of racism, sexism. If it's an ism, they've really been looking at it and trying to combat. So those were some of the salient and formative influences in my life.
Yeah, so the strength of, so we have clergy and lay folks on this panel, and the one of the things that I have so appreciated from lay folks in the church, and first of all, I get nervous about these divisions, is they bring this wealth of information and life experience, and they have touched on the world in ways that me as clergy, like I've got my nose in a theology book, it's harder for me. And so to hear from our congregation full of nurses and doctors and teachers and grandparents and youth really builds the voice in the conference. It's so powerful. So I'm just really, really grateful for that. Oh my gosh, I'm really grateful for that. Go ahead, Pat. I see your hand.
So just a couple of things in response to what you were just saying, Rashinda. I remember preaching at a church in Northern Virginia several years ago. A guy came out, shook my hand, and said, want to introduce myself. I'm Bob Herbst. I'm a former Assistant Secretary of the Interior under President Carter. That's the kind of people, they might not be all over the place, but we got people like that sitting in our pews on Sunday mornings, and we don't know who they are or don't know where they are. The other comment, and not a question, but a comment on what Jonathan Brake was saying about mission. I think this, because the church has always been in mission. We have always been about caring for God's people all over the world, and we love to do that. And people love to go on mission trips, and they go all over the world and they do this, that, and the other. And we love missionaries and all that. So to say we cannot continue to do the traditional mission of the United Methodist Church without care for God's creation, because the creation is causing so much problems for God's people all over the world. So in order to do what we've always done, like it's nothing new, in order to do what we've always done, we have to consider what's happening to the planet if we're going to keep caring for the people. So it seems to me there's a lot of potential in that notion that creation care is mission. I just really love that. So I particularly appreciate what you had to say, Jonathan. And I just really wanted to re-emphasize that. Good to be with y'all.
That's great, Pat. I was going to say, I'm going to follow that with all the people and all the animals and all the forests. Say amen to that. So, Kathy, go ahead.
I know we want to jump into breakout groups, but I'm going to ask the question I keep asking all the time, which is, what more might we do together? And from the perspective of the creation justice movement, we've imagined trainings for annual conferences. We've done the resolutions. We've done questions for bishops and encouraging how to meet with your bishops. What else comes to mind? And this is really a question for all of us that the movement might help make this more happen in our conferences. So if folks have answers to that right now, I'd be glad to hear them, but please hold that question and bring those answers to those of us in the annual conference organizing team and beyond.
Yes, Cara, would you be comfortable I know you're in the midst of, well, you're underwater at the moment in some parts of Florida. You live this daily, this sort of climate emergency. What does onboarding look like? What would be helpful? I think we have time to have one more answer on that, and then encourage people to use the chat to ask and answer this.
You're asking me?
I know I put you on the spot, but if you're okay with that, that'd be great.
Absolutely. We are taking the approach that it's church by church, relationship by relationship. We don't come in blazing about climate change either, believe it or not. I mean, it's part of it, but we come in talking about our spiritual and biblical call to be good stewards of God's earth, because we have found that when you really go the hard line right away, it turns a lot of people off. So we're really trying to connect with a lot of the joy, gardens, intergenerational hikes, because if you love nature, you're going to want to take care of nature. It's really a challenge to be that patient when I'm a consultant for Rethink Energy Florida, and I talk to literal climate scientists and glacier experts, weekly. So yeah, it's a challenge, but what we do is we incorporate in the climate message through films and speakers and webinars and things like that. But, I just go back to starting these creation care teams at the local church. And so what kind of resources could we use? We don't have anything to hand them. It would be wonderful to have a creation justice sticker or starting kit or book or, literally anything to engage them. And that's one thing. We don't have any budgets here really, but we did get a grant to get some Kindle links that we're able to give out when people join our training. So to me, we just have a real lack of, material backing up what we're doing to be able to recognize churches that are involved or, things along that nature. So that could help.
That's genius. Yeah, because there's already a lot of materials actually through United Methodist Creation Justice Movement. Everyone you've heard from, of course, have these materials. It's a matter of like curating and each context is different, right? Those materials, those toolkits, they need to reflect the place, the kind of conversation you're having. So those materials in every way, like a whole, I mean, how many different flavors of toothpaste are there in the grocery store, right? Like it's a whole wall. We need that in the creation justice movement. People be able to use what is really necessary for them, check it out, learn about the rest. Okay, so what we're going to do next is breakout rooms. And I'm going to launch the breakout rooms. How we're going to work this is everybody gets to choose which breakout room they're in. And I hope that folks, if you see your name on it, I've pre-chosen for a few folks who will lead. So your name is on the breakout room. But everyone else just kind of choose which room. You'll be in there about 15 minutes. Now it says 30 minutes because there's a preset. So don't freak out about that one. I'll go ahead and close it when we're done, and I'll send like little notes. We got 5 minutes or whatever. So you have a sense of your timing when you're in the breakout room. So I'm going to launch the breakout room, and then after that, we'll all come back here and we'll all come back here and just, have a quick debrief and a prayer together, because this is prayerful work. Well, I always know when it's been a good breakout room session because people are still talking when you get forced out. So that's fantastic. So we have a couple minutes just open to share. Like, how did that go? Anybody learn something or have a big smile or some hope in their heart or that they want to share?
Well, I'll just jump in. We ended up
Kathy.
merging our groups, and we had a fun conversation about coming at hiring from a variety of perspectives. So North Carolina's got a person that wants this work. They're trying to find funding for that person to do the work. New England has the funding and the go ahead to hire some. They're trying to find the right person. And then Minnesota a number of years ago had a kind of an intern, and we worked with a younger person as kind of mentoring and helped that person do the work surrounded by a team. So it was just interesting to hear different approaches to staffing this work.
Awesome. And I know I heard the word solar panels when people were coming up. Does somebody want to touch on that? Because that's a big one that people ask lots of questions about. I don't know who it was. I'm putting someone on the spot.
That
Janet?
actually was what was me, I think. Yep, I'm actually from New Hampshire, and we're looking at solar panels for the parsonage and for our church. So we're just starting that process.
Well, can we encourage you?
Talk to me. Call me up.
Yeah, I mean, all of us need this. And there are some fantastic opportunities funding wise coming through. Somebody said they had a retired EPA person in their church. Well, that person is a tremendous resource. A lot of these funds are going to be kind of stewarded through the EPA, through local kind of hubs in your area. And they're going to actually help put these together, these sort of requests for funds. And first funds will be really headed towards impacted communities, BIPOC communities. So be thinking now about how you want to ask for those first funds, and they're going to give away as much money as they can. So think of second funds and third funds. And so that's pretty exciting for sure. Anyone else want to share before we move to our time? We're going to do resources and a prayer, but first I want to give another chance for people to share about what was that conversation like? Was there something that you really want to pull forward to share?
So I'm going to call out Judy for a moment and say, Judy, you and Rashenda need to talk, because Judy's really interested in what's going forward with the 4 resolutions, and is really also very interested in figuring out how to meet with your new bishops. So Rashenda and Judy, talk.
So just to fill folks in, the Pacific Northwest Annual Conference, of which I'm a member, submitted 4 resolutions based around the work of the United Methodist Creation Justice team to create a set of model resolutions. If you didn't have a chance to submit those this time around, next year we got lots of teaching ahead of us. So next year, think about that. So Judy, I'll be thrilled to. Laura Baumgardner, she's really kind of leading that up, and she is got a lot of hats including Washington Interfaith Power and Light. So
Right.
go ahead, Judy.
Right. I was just going to say, I know Laura. She used to be a pastor, well, assistant pastor sort of at our church here in Seattle. So I know Laura pretty well. But thanks. That's great. It'll be fun to connect with her.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Cara. I see your.
Yeah, I just wanted to have us encourage Janet, who just found out about Creation Care and joined this call. And so she's feeling probably a little overwhelmed right now, since this is, people from all over the country and annual conferences and all of the things. We just were trying to encourage her. She's got a couple of people at her church. And so maybe if there's any advice for someone who's just like brand new starting off, that anybody wanted to share. I offered, focus on getting rid of the plastic and foam first, but there's small and low-hanging fruit, I think, is what someone else said. But I just wanted to lift her up and say that, I'm so glad that she's here, and that's exactly why we do this, to help, encourage new folks.
So
Absolutely.
Janet,
I think show us for it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Janet, I would suggest the new course that has come out from Discipleship Ministries called Loving People and Planet, which is based on Pat Watkins' book that he edited for Mission U for United Women in Faith, called Climate Justice, Call to Hope and Action. So that book has been the basis for this new course through Discipleship Ministries, through the Lay Servant Academy, called Loving People and Planet. It's a great first start on how do you start a green team? What's the theology behind it? What's our Methodist or Wesleyan heritage say about creation care? So I would say that's probably the first place I'd start.
Wonderful.
I'm
Thank
jump
you.
into, because our time is now we're right at the end. So we got two things left. One is I want to encourage everybody, put stuff in the chat in terms of resources, but also Karen and Kathy, I think you were going to just quickly touch on what resources you were going to pop in there, and then Don Lewis will pray us out. Go ahead, Karen and Kathy.
Yeah, so Kathy's already put, and I see Mary Beth has added as well. So I'm just going to enumerate them, and Kathy is going to be our chat guru and get them in the chat. The annual conference organizing team, we can always use additional members, and you can find information about that on our website. The jurisdictional team meetings, also information on the website and through the Creation Justice Ministries, Creation, I always get this name mixed up. Kathy, help me out. The
Creation Justice Movement. Yes, yeah, you got it.
No. The website that Global Ministries is doing.
Oh, the Creation Care Network.
There we go, Creation Care Network. There's so many Creation Care things out there that I always get the names muddled. Anyway, Creation Care Network is another great place, and Kathy will get some of that in there. The UMCJM site, our website has lots of information there on the annual conference organizing page. We've got the webinars that I alluded to earlier. It's a series of 7 that talks about how to put together an annual conference team. And I want to read off the topics. They include the theology, the missional context, vision, recruitment, structure, action plan, and mission. So that there's a lot that's there in that 7-part webinar series. So Dan Juranko was the one who organized that, and it's a really great resource. So I'd highly recommend using that. Also on that website are the model resolutions. There are 8 of them. And again, probably it's too late to submit them this year for your annual conference, but utilize it as information, as recruitment, as education, and get them ready for next year. I talked about the resource of the bishops, the article in the June 22 newsletter. There's also questions for bishops and Episcopal candidates that are on our newsletter. And then upcoming, our May newsletter is going to be focusing on annual conference teams. So there's a lot that's going on. And again, thank you, Kathy, for getting all of that in the chat. And as you know, you all can save the chat so that you've got those resources available to you.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you so much, Karen and everyone. And this is the prayer. We're going to pray out, and then we've got a little red button that we push and say farewell and blessings and love to all of you. And I'm so, so glad you could all be here for this conversation. So, Dawn, would you like to lift a prayer as we pray out today?
Absolutely. And before I do, just thank you for everybody that presented. It was fascinating. I feel reinvigorated just listening to all the wonderful work that everybody's doing. It's been a little frustrating here in Texas with our legislature and all their anti-climate legislation. So this was so rewarding. I'm going to close this out with an Earth Day prayer that I got. It's from actually, he was a pastor at a United Methodist Church in Charlotte. So here we go. O God, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is, seen and unseen, you place us in your creation and you command us to care for it. Your works declare glory and splendor, and you call us to praise and reverence. When we have degraded or destroyed earth's bounty, forgive us. Where we have taken beauty and majesty for granted, have mercy upon us. Where we have become estranged from the creatures with whom we share this planet, grant us your peace. Renew us in the waters of baptism, refresh us with the winds of your spirit, and sustain us with the bread of life. In the name of Jesus Christ and for the sake of the new creation, we pray. Amen.
Amen.